Don't do that. Don't do that again. You don't know what that's from probably, but let us know in the comments what that's from. Give them a couple seconds. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It's when Jar Jar uses his tongue to grab like a apple from the fruit bowl and when they're all having dinner, and then he tries to do it a second time and Qui-Gon catches his tongue and he's like, don't do that again. And then he lets his tongue go.
I actually remember that part.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the prequels, right?
Yeah, Episode 1. It's a classic, in many ways. In other ways, not so much. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about Severance, Episode 1 of Season 1.
What?
Through Episode 9.
I thought you were going to make us go just talk about the first episode.
Oh yeah, you didn't write notes on all the episodes?
No.
Oh, well, you're going to look silly.
Yeah, that's fair.
Took us forever to get through this, right?
Yeah.
And you may think that because we kept saying we were going to finish Severance, so by virtue of us taking so long, you may have thought, oh, they must not really like it. But that's really not the case. We really like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just weird. It just took us a million years to get through this first season. But now we're completely caught up on season 2. So we'll have a review ready for you right when it ends, basically. Just one of those weird things, isn't it?
It's just one of those things.
Torn tip. So what is Severance?
So the actual procedure Severance is... Okay. Main character, Mark, works for this company called Lumen.
Mm-hmm.
And every day he shows up to Lumen. He, goes through security, all of that, goes down to his area. And when he gets into the elevator and goes down to the severed floor, his brain switches off and switches back on to a different part. He's basically, they call them outies and innies.
And when you're working in the building, that's your innie. When you're outside the building, that's your outie. But it's two completely separate personalities. Kind of. It's
separate beings, basically.
Yeah, it's
in the same body.
A different part of your brain is controlling, or science-wise, I don't know exactly how they're explaining it, but you have a completely different set of memories. I think that's the real thing.
You're basically reborn. Yeah, I guess.
Your innie doesn't remember anything that happened on the outside. Your outie doesn't remember anything that happened on the inside, and that's how. So you're two people.
Yeah. So on the outside,
in as much as a person is developed by their own experiences and memories, you are two separate people.
Yeah.
Which brings up an interesting question, actually, because who are you? Is it?
Should I finish giving the synopsis?
That's pretty much it.
Well, on the outside, the storyline is Mark dealing with stuff that has happened before the show starts and his relationship with his sister and his brother-in-law. And on the inside, he has 3 main coworkers and them dealing with being innies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Now, whatever you're going to say.
So it's an interesting premise, right? That's pretty unique, splitting your mind into 2 different pieces, and how does that all work? So as a piece of entertainment, that's a cool premise, but this show is really more about deep ideas than it is about anything, in my opinion. And like interesting questions. I guess all science fiction is kind of that way. The real purpose of Minority Report isn't to watch like a fun little action movie. It's
ethics.
What are the ethics of being able to arrest people for crimes they haven't committed if you're pretty sure they're going to commit them? It's like sci-fi is always like a vessel for some sort of philosophical idea, almost always, right? Think about Scythe, that book you read, right?
Yeah.
Scythe.
I was thinking of Dune.
Yeah.
That's also, I guess that's religion also, right?
Yeah. Dune is an example. Blade Runner is a really good example. The Matrix is a really good example. They're all, they're packaged in an entertaining, fun way, but it's really about the ideas. That's like the meat. At least for me, that's the meat of a good science fiction thing. This one is no different in that sense, but definitely there are people that find this show boring, right?
Yeah. Which I do wonder if they actually think it's boring, the whole show, or if they found the beginning of the first episode boring. I wonder about that.
Yeah. I honestly, the first and the last episodes were my favorite part of this season. Because I remember feeling like, wow, this is so well done during the
Mm-hmm.
first episode and during the last episode. And I think I would have felt that way a little bit more throughout the season if we'd watched it more consistently. But I really remember being hooked in the first episode.
Which really surprises me because I could have sworn that when I watched this the first time, I asked you to watch it with me.
No,
Yeah,
I'd
which
never seen any of it.
is surprising to me.
Yeah. I thought it was a comedy show. I
No.
saw the poster and it was Adam Scott, and for some reason I feel like Adam Scott's a good comedy actor. I don't even know what else I've seen him in really. I know he's done work with Ben Stiller before. Oh, he's in Walter Mitty.
Mm-hmm.
He's the douchebag boss
Yeah, he is.
from Walter Mitty.
Oh, Parks and Rec.
Okay, yeah, that's probably what
Yeah,
I've seen him
that's
from. So,
the biggest thing.
yeah, so like I assumed that that's what this was just from the poster, but it's definitely not. This is a thriller
No.
series with
Drama. And
mostly drama, yeah. And it's really really good.
I will say, when I don't think this is scary though. When
No.
people say thriller, I think scary, and I don't think
Yeah.
this is scary.
Yeah.
It's suspenseful.
Yeah. Yeah, and they make you care about the characters. Like I cared about all of his coworkers.
Name them.
They are Mark S, who's the main character, and then you've got Dylan,
That's always the name that we throw
Aaron,
out.
Dylan, and then you have Irving, played by John Turturro, and Helly R, who's the new girl on the floor. She replaced Pete, the businessman in the forest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mark's best friend at work.
previous, yeah. And I really don't want to talk too much about plot details because I think you should watch this because it works as a thriller.
It's like a mystery.
It's compelling. The mystery of it is compelling, and then the ideas when they're presented are really fun to think about and to chew on. I will talk a little bit about what I think the bigger ideas, the bigger questions that this show is asking are, but I won't get into specifics.
I think you should say very generally what you think it is, or
What do you mean?
what you felt it was.
So, but straight off the bat, the first theme that I picked up on while watching this was religion, because the way that these workers interact with the company they are in, the rules that they have to follow, their relationship with the founders of the company, how they're taught to view the founders.
The handbook when it's quoted.
Yeah, it like just screams religion. That was the very first thing that I picked up on. And not just any religion, but like high what's it called? High demand religions teetering on cults, you know? That it's definitely a critique of that sort of thing. That was like the most obvious, the first big theme that I picked up on.
Which is funny because from the very first episode, Braden started saying this. I was like, really?
Because Micah had seen this season before, and this had never occurred to her.
I think I'm a very passive watcher when I watch shows by myself. Usually they're on in the background when I'm doing something. And so I must not have really been paying attention because this season came out 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of time for me to forget, and I wonder what I was doing while I was watching this show.
Because it was every episode, multiple times an episode, and something would be said, and I would just turn and look at Micah, and she's like, "Yes, I see it. I
Yeah.
get it. I know. I see it now."
And once it was pointed out to me, I couldn't not see it.
Well, I think you probably watched this as you were doing other things.
That's what I'm saying.
So this is not the kind of show that you want to do that with.
No.
Yeah, you kind of need to be paying attention
for it to be maybe that's why people think this is an uninteresting show.
Because they can't watch it passively.
Right, because they are watching passively and they're like, oh, it was just fine.
I cannot tell you a show that I've watched passively that I've enjoyed. Okay, that's a lie. I watched a good chunk of Silicon Valley, sort of passively at work.
That's fair.
But like that's easy because there's punchlines.
Yeah.
And you may miss some stuff as you're watching passively, but then you'll hear a punchline and you're like, oh, that's funny. You'll pick up on stuff. But
Yeah.
if you're watching something like this passively, it's just you're gonna lose a lot because it's crafted. That's another thing that I'll say about this season. It's like it's edited impeccably and
Yeah.
shot impeccably. It's so good. And I think a lot of it was directed by Ben Stiller. He's really good at it. Like particularly, and I guess this is something I sort of noticed a little bit more in season 2, but the way that they end their episodes sometimes with transitions and using objects that are in the foreground of the frame to transition to the next scene. So often
Mm.
it'll be like a wide shot and then characters are walking and then there'll be something that sort of blocks the camera, but the camera continues to pan, and then once it gets past the obstacle, all of a sudden we're in a new scene. Just really well done. And then the way that they end some of the episodes with their music choices,
Yeah.
it's like it's really really I love that. That's sort of like my little autistic thing when it comes to movies. If I notice good editing, I get really happy.
Well, and this isn't a spoiler, but like season 2, their editing was also really good.
Right. Yeah.
Of just something to look forward to for
Yeah.
season 2.
Yeah. But again, like I think the meat of this for me is the ideas, and I wrote down some of the ones I found most interesting.
Well, just really everything about this was made well, right? The
Yeah.
sets are really good.
Yep.
The acting, the dialogue, the script, all of that it's all very believable.
So that might be one thing people may not like, in my opinion, is the sets. They're a little too samey, but it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
It's supposed to feel very corporate, bureaucratic.
And it's really interesting to see the characters that are on the severed floor, and if they ever show them as their outie. Just because on the severed floor, everything is very white, very fluorescent, and so people look very washed out. But then people with lighter eyes, their eyes are piercing, and then when you see their outie, you're like, oh, your eyes aren't actually that, and it's just like lighting and atmosphere and all of that, which is just. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, you can see everybody's pores on the severed floor. You can see everybody's weird lips.
Yeah.
So here's some of the big ideas that I found.
Are we in spoilers?
Themes? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So the first one, religion, right? I've talked about that a little bit. Work-life balance.
Because that was kind of the idea of,
For
that's
some of them,
how it's marketed to a lot of people, or how it's
Yeah.
talked about. That if you're tired of being tired of work, be severed. Come
Yeah.
to work, and you'll never, you don't know.
And the more you find out about why some of these characters chose to sever, the more questions it sort of brings up. Because when you find out why Mark is there, you're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Would that be worth it in his scenario? When you find out why Dylan did it, or Irving. Well, Irving we're still kind of unsure
really know.
about, but you can make guesses. I've made guesses about why Irving did it, and that's like the guess I made was like interesting to think about. Would that be worth it? You find out why Christopher Walken's in this, by the way. When you find out why Christopher Walken did it, you're like, oh, that's a really interesting angle that I never would have thought about.
And that's in season 2, but I thought that was also really, really interesting to talk about.
Yeah. When you find out why Helly did it, it's like, oh wow, this is. And I think that that's an issue that probably people have had with season 2, is this show is definitely offering more questions than answers so far.
But I'm okay with it.
For now, yeah. There need to be some answers at the end.
Right, but I think that they did a really good job of making these characters three-dimensional.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different reason.
Yeah.
Of why they did this, and so far, the people that have gotten backstories, is really interesting to watch and adds a lot of substance. To the show.
The other themes that I wrote down: what are the ethics of making decisions for others, for other people? Because these innies were born without consent, basically, and it's not exactly like having a child because they're born as adults and they never asked to be brought into the world. their outies sort of made that decision for them.
How is that different than having babies, though? The parents decided to
Yeah,
bring these
I mean,
kids
I
into
mean,
the,
you
in a
could,
traditional sense of bringing kids into the
you
world.
could say it's the same. You could totally.
So you're asking what is the ethics, and
Yeah, what are the ethics of that?
I think that that's what makes the world go around.
Yeah, but these people they're also only half a person, and they only get to exist within this environment and this context. But that was another one. The What are the ethics of making big decisions for other people? There's a lot of like, otherism, which you could stretch that out and say that they're making a critique on xenophobia or racism or whatever, because some of the innies and some of the people in the real world don't see the outies as or sorry, other way around. Some of the outies don't see the innies as real people. They don't really count.
Well, and it is interesting how outies and innies refer to themselves as him or her. You know, like Mark's outie could refer to his innie as he did such and such.
Right.
Oh, I
It's
guess he slipped and did such and
right.
such.
And that brings me to the other theme that I mentioned at the beginning that just sort of dawned on me as we've been recording. What makes a person? Is it their experiences and their memories? So, if that's the definition of what makes a person, then the
The people that
in,
within.
then the innies are completely different people from their outies. But if a person is more complex than that, and you bring some knowledge and some sense of ethics with you, they call it a priori in philosophy, which means like before the fact. So if you bring some of that with you into the world as you're born, then maybe you're not really a separate person as an innie. It's you're a different part of the same person. It's interesting to think about.
You're asking what makes a person,
Right.
right?
That's one of the questions that
I feel like
this lends itself to.
having the ability to choose, make decisions, but then what about little kids, like babies? They don't have the ability to choose. Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, it breeds discussion and it's good stuff. So I really like this. I don't have much else to say. Oh, religion, cults, and then faith and skepticism. Lots of thick, weighty, heavy, girthy subjects to talk about and think about. And I like it when a show or a film does that. It's good. It's good stuff. And that's pretty much all I had written down.
I will say there were certain things that they introduced in this season that by the end of the season I was like, wait, we never circled back to X, Y, and Z. And at least X and Y, or something like that, does get touched in season 2 so far.
Uh-huh.
And the season's not done yet, and so we'll see if,
But Z has not been touched.
at least for me.
And you want someone to touch Z. God damn it. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. So we'll just have to see how season 2 ends
Yeah.
to see if some of these things get answered. But yeah, are you ready to rate it?
Yeah. All right, just to annoy Micah, I'm going to give it a 9.103.
Why?
So that you have to write that out.
I only got a 2 decimal points.
Oh, okay, a 9.11. How do you like that?
Yeah.
I'm going to give this a 9.11 weird lips
Oh, I was gonna
out of
do that
10.
one. Okay. Did you want to say why, or that was it? You already basically did.
Yeah, it is, it does get a little slow sometimes, so that's why it's not really perfect for me, but I do think this is one of the more exciting shows out there right now, not because it's action packed. I would compare it to The Bear. Just like really, really well acted, really well shot, really well edited, compelling, human, total drama action. That's why I would compare it to The Bear. I hope it doesn't have a third season that's as sort of a big of a drop off as The Bear had, but we'll see.
Yeah. I am going to rate this a 9, and I'm not going to be annoying and add in decimal points.
To yourself.
Right.
Okay.
I'm going to do a 9 white walls out of 10. I think this show you should watch actively and not passively like I did the first time. I think, yeah, this isn't like the most fast paced show, but it's definitely a builder.
Mm-hmm.
And it sets itself
Like
up.
Bob.
Yeah, like Bob the Builder. I think that it does a really good job of
Or like Big D Construction.
thinking of everything,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. Like I said, I was confused on why they didn't circle back to certain things, but so far in season 2, things have been answered.
Yeah.
So, did you want to do Parents Guide?
It's rated R for, well, it would be rated R if it was a
Is
movie,
it
but it's,
TV 14? Maybe.
no, it's MA.
Yeah.
So language, and then there's also there are some scenes where they
Medical
sort of,
procedures.
yeah, they sort of show how severance happens. So you got to cut the scalp open, and then you got to mess around a little bit with the brain. A little gross. So there's that.
Mostly language, though.
Yeah, mostly language. I don't have any spoilers to talk about.
I thought you were going to talk about more in depth.
No.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Moving on.
Okay.
Okay. I have 2 book reports to do.
Good. How many pages did you write?
The books, or that I wrote?
Yeah, these book reports.
2 pages for 2 books. How do you like that?
Okay.
So the first one that I'll talk about is called A Hatful of Sky. This is the second Tiffany Aching book. I mentioned the first one, The We Free Men.
Oh, this is book 2.
This is book 2.
Okay.
Written by Terry Pratchett. And my theory was I sort of read The We Free Men like we watched Severance season 1 very inconsistently, except, the book even more inconsistently. I think it took me like 2 months to get through that book.
Oh.
It's not very long either.
How many hours is it?
It's only like 10 hours.
Oh, yeah.
So, I said what I remember from that first book, I really enjoy, but overall, I think I gave it like a 7.5 because I just didn't, get my hands dirty with it. I got my hands dirty with this one, and I was right. It's much more enjoyable when you are consistent with it, and it's really a great fantasy series. Like this is a fantasy series that would be awesome to read to kids, play for kids, because it's advanced enough and interesting enough to be interesting for adults, but it's also not violent, not sexual. There's no language in it, so it's appropriate for kids, right? I'd call it, maybe writing wise, it's probably prose wise. Sorry, I prefer it to Harry Potter personally, like a lot.
You prefer this over Harry Potter?
Yeah, just the way it's written. I think it's very funny. It's very fun, and it holds my interest as an adult.
But that's also just different stories.
Yeah, they're different stories. You're right. The story of Harry Potter is classic. You can't be touched. But that's just to give you an annoying comparison that you didn't want. So
Yeah, we didn't want that.
So in this book, Tiffany Aching, the main character, I think she's around 10 at this point. She's training to be a witch. She goes to live with an older witch as an apprentice. The older witch, her name is Miss Level, and Miss Level is a twin of herself. So there's 2 of her.
So, a clone?
No, she is 2 people. She has 2 bodies, but they share the same consciousness.
They share the same consciousness.
Mm-hmm. So she can go and pick up Tiffany on a broomstick to take her to her apprenticeship, while she is also making sure the house is clean.
Is that how she was born, or she created a twin of herself?
No, that's how she was born. She's always had 2 of herself. And people thought that she was a twin, so it was just easier to tell people that she has a twin. But it's really just her. She has 2 bodies. So that's Miss
Okay.
Level.
And she knows what her other self is doing?
Yeah, it's all her. She's like she's a hive mind, I guess, of 2 people.
Okay.
So that's who she's living with. The what's it called? The problem. What is it called in a story?
Conflict?
Yeah, the conflict in this book is there's this creature called a hiver, and this is like an amalgamation. A hiver can take over somebody. They take over somebody's body and control them, basically. So this hiver has been doing this for like millions of years and has fragments of millions of identities within itself, but it needs a host. So sort of like a parasite, and it eventually kills its host. It drives the host crazy, and it picks up on Tiffany because Tiffany is extremely intelligent, and Tiffany can do this thing where she can like exit her body and see herself, and this triggers the hiver, and the hiver is pursuing Tiffany and eventually takes over Tiffany's body when Tiffany is doing this thing. So it's really interesting. It's good stuff. The Knack McFeagles, the little pixies, the wee free men, are still my favorite part of this book. They're they're just really funny. They do the three raccoons in a trench coat thing a lot of times in this book, and it's really great. So they're trying to. I like told Micah basically every time they did something funny or said something funny, but they're trying to catch Tiffany, and so they're like, let's just stack on top of each other and put on a coat, and then let's go and take a carriage to where Tiffany is. And they're on the carriage, and the carriage rider is like, this is really strange. I can't really see this guy's face, and he's moving in a really strange way, and oh, but he's got gold. Okay, because the Knack McFeagles love to steal, and they've been stealing for centuries or whatever. So they've just got stockpiles of gold where they live, and they're on the carriage, and they're like, can you not go any faster? And he's like, no, I can't. Like, I'm dropping off all this cargo, and every bump in the road is dangerous for the cargo, and that's slowing us down. And then he hears this crash behind him, and the three raccoons in a trench coat like, yeah, that's not a problem anymore now, is it? It's just funny. It's just lots of situations like
no, but
that.
finish that one.
And then
Because they're saying
because they need to link up with another carriage in order to get into the mountains where Tiffany is, and the guy's like, oh, there's no way we're making that tonight. And then the lead Knack McFeagle is like, I'll tell you what, if we don't make that connection, I'll give you the hiding of your life. But if we do make that connection, there's 5 yon gold coins in it for you. just great. Just great stuff. And then at one point, like, this little girl sees them because they're really tiny little blue men that wear kilts and they have red hair. And she sees them, and she's just like, her mouth drops. And the lead Knack McFeagle is like, don't worry, I've got this. We're what you call an optical illusion. Do not worry, we'll be gone in a flash. And just disappear.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So it's really great. You guys should read these books. They're awesome. I'll give this a 9. It's a really great little fantasy book. 9 Knack McFeagles out of 10. Bada bing, bada boom. Moving on to the last thing. Okay, so I also read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. This is basically the study of why exceptional people became exceptional. And you may hear that question, and you may think to yourself, well, it's got to do with intelligence, or it's got to do with hard work, or it's got to do with whatever, whatever, whatever. Yes, in part to both of those ideas, you need to be smart enough, but only smart enough. That was a really interesting point in this book. There was a group of kids from California that were the highest IQ group of kids, and they were studied by this one guy. They were called the termites. I can't remember exactly why. I think the main scientist doing the study had something to do with termites in his name, so he called them the termites, or his name was Termin. I don't know, some shit like that. Anyways, they were following these kids from adolescence and expecting them to become Nobel laureates and just CEOs and really successful people. And what they ended up finding was the people that won the Nobel prizes from their class, were not any smarter than the kids that they were studying. In fact, they had lower IQs. It didn't really matter who had the highest IQ, who was the smartest. All that mattered is you were smart enough to be within that category, right? So that's point number 1. Hard work is really important. That's a topic he goes into, but something that was really surprising to me was the number one thing that is consistent among outliers is their circumstances, what they were born into, what the opportunities were that they had that were unique to them, that were uniquely given to them, that are not given to everybody. And that was super, super, super interesting. One example he gives was Bill Gates, Bill Joy, and Steve Jobs, three of like the all-time entrepreneurs within Silicon Valley. They were all born within a few months of each other, same year. And that was the perfect time for them to be born, because it was just the right time for them to be coming of age during the tech boom. And not only that, Steve Jobs, yeah, Steve Jobs grew up right next to all the software engineers, so he was able to learn from them and experience that whole culture. But Bill Gates happened to live in a town in Washington where the high school that he was going to happened to have an excess of money, and they happened to decide to buy a computer in like the 1960s. And not only
Oh.
did they buy a computer, they bought a computer terminal, which was a revolutionary way to do computing that was a lot faster. And he happened, through circumstances, to gain unlimited access to that computer. So by the time that he was in college, he was way ahead of everybody else because he was obsessed with it. And so that's where the hard work comes in. He definitely spent the time to become an expert. He did his 10,000 hours. That's also sort of where that 10,000 hour rule comes from, this book. If you spend 10,000 hours on anything, you can become an expert. But he was an expert going into college when everybody else was basically starting from scratch. And it's not because Bill Gates was smarter than everybody else. It's because he was smart enough, he worked hard enough, and he was insanely lucky to be born when he did, where he did, or sorry, when he was born and when he was born. Did I just say when twice?
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a strunk.
Okay, you're just saying that he's born into having these opportunities
Right.
available
Right.
by chance.
Yeah. And you could maybe hear that and think that this book offers an excuse for why you're not as successful as you might wish you were. But that's not really the point of it. The point of it is to examine what exactly makes an outlier and what is within your control to help you achieve that status, right? While recognizing why maybe you have the opportunities you do, or the why you don't have the opportunities that you wish you did. And I told Micah, like, I feel like this is the best parenting book that no one ever advertised as a parenting book, because it gives you so many suggestions looking at the lives of these people of how you can help prepare your child to be successful. And it's all based on, it's really difficult to argue with statistics. Like, these things have been studied and, written down now in this book, and you can use them to form how you want to raise your kid, what sort of things you want to teach them. Do I want to send them to classes during the summer or not? How do I teach them how to handle authority? Do I teach them to be really submissive to authority? Or do I teach them instead that they need to be ready and willing to ask questions to authority figures, to not be intimidated by them? Don't be afraid of them. Force them to ask the doctor questions. Don't ask questions for them to the doctor. Just stuff just stuff like that. Do I hold them back, or do I have them be older for their age?
They're green.
Yeah, their grade. Spoiler alert, the best answer is let them be older for their grade. Just really fascinating stuff and surprising stuff. So I really, really enjoyed this. I think this is something that definitely every parent should read, but I feel like everybody should read it and just get an idea of why successful people are the way they are. And it's not necessarily for just the reasons you would think. It also helped me. I had this thought as I was finishing the book, because we've talked a little bit about Florence during the Renaissance
Mm-hmm.
and how crazy it is that, like, so many of the smartest people of all time and the greatest artists of all time were all born within 100 to 150 years of each other. And not only that, like, within the same country, within the same city in that country, all from Florence. After reading Outliers, like now it makes perfect sense. There was probably some artist or some kid in Germany that had the potential to be an even better artist than Michelangelo, but he didn't get the opportunity because he wasn't in Florence.
It wasn't in the right environment for it.
Right. There was probably some kid in, I don't know, Budapest that was just as clever as Da Vinci, just as inventive as Da Vinci, but he never got the chance to show it because he wasn't born in Florence. Or there was probably a shrewd thinker somewhere in the New World, as smart as Machiavelli was, but never got the chance to really show it. And it all has to do with timing and location, location, location. So, a really good book. I would give this book a 9, easy 9. Malcolm Gladwell's out of 10. Go and read it.
Okay, do we have anything coming up?
Severance season 2 will not be done next week. Okay. Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't think that'll be done for another 3 weeks. Do you have a video you want to plug?
Yeah, sure. Go watch my God of War video. I just did it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Braden releases these video essays on YouTube. That's the only place you can find them. Definitely go give them a little look-see.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you'll just have to be surprised, like we will, with what we record next week. But have a great week, everybody. Bye!